Hello, and welcome to our first webinar for September's Rural Communities Month. Thank you for your patience as we took care of some technological issues. This webinar is titled Growing Recreational Economies for Rural Communities. It is part of the Sustainable Growth webinar series hosted by the Maryland Department of Planning in partnership with the Smart Growth Network. My name is Jill Lemke, and I manage planning engagement at the Maryland Department of Planning. I also serve as a member of the Smart Growth Network Steering Committee. The Smart Growth Network is a national alliance of advocates, practitioners, policymakers, and local leaders working toward a shared vision for land use and infrastructure policies and actions that result in healthy, equitable, sustainable, and prosperous communities for all. In addition to hosting webinars, we provide information on effective planning, development, and preservation practices. The Smart Growth Network website is undergoing a transition, so please stay tuned for updates. Today's webinar is one in a series of webinars hosted by the Maryland Department of Planning on sustainable growth and related topics. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted along with past webinars for viewing via the Maryland Department of Planning's website at planning.maryland.gov or by visiting our YouTube channel. The Department of Planning website also provides valuable information on planning initiatives, tools, and educational opportunities, including information on future webinars. While you are there, please subscribe to our newsletter to learn more about upcoming programs. It is important to note that the views expressed by the speakers are those of the speaker and not necessarily those of the Maryland Department of Planning, the state of Maryland, or the Smart Growth Network. Viewers of this live event are eligible to receive 1.5 CM credits from the American Planning Association. To receive your credits, please visit the APA's website, planning.org, to log into your account and search for the name of today's event. You can also search for event number 9296797. Following the presentation, we will address as many questions as time permits. You can submit a question at any time by opening the Q&A tool at the bottom of the Zoom control panel. Now, I am pleased to introduce our speakers for today. Lauren Coombs is a community revitalization strategist with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Office of Community Revitalization, located in Washington, D.C. She represents Recreation Economy for Rural Communities, a multi-federal agency initiative that has helped towns leverage the power of outdoor recreation to support local economies and thriving downtowns. Jason Ford, who hopes to join us but may not be able to, currently serves as Economic and Community Development Director at the City of Hartwell, Georgia. Julie Martirana has over 35 years of experience working in higher education with Montgomery College as an IT professional, project manager, and now as an adjunct business and management professor. Since semi-retiring in 2018, Julie has dedicated herself to the town she has grown to love, Brunswick, Maryland. Over the past 5 years, she has served as chairman of the Brunswick Main Street Board of Directors, the City of Brunswick Grants and Economic Development Coordinator, and most recently as Brunswick City Administrator. She is a recent graduate of the University of Baltimore's Certified Public Manager program. Julie is proud to blend her skills with her desire to help the community she calls home. Carmen Hilton has worked with the City of Brunswick and the Brunswick Main Street program for the past 4 years. Previously, Carmen worked in commercial real estate for much of her career. She lives with her husband in Mount Airy, Maryland, another Main Street, Maryland community. Hilton is proud to have raised a daughter who is an oceans engineer in Baltimore, Maryland, and a son who has graduated with his business management degree from Salisbury University. And now it is my pleasure to turn it over to Lauren, who will kick off the presentations. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate everybody and their patience today as we get started. I also want to apologize. I only have one screen, and so I know I'm not going to be able to go on presentation mode. I'm going to be reading my notes as well. And so I just want to apologize in advance if you're seeing not the full screen of slides. But anyways, wanted to say welcome. Again, my name is Lauren Coombs. I work at the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, in the Office of Community Revitalization, and I help to manage the Recreation Economy for Rural Communities program. Today, we like to do several things. And that includes kind of going in through what the Recreation Economy for Rural Communities, or work planning assistance program is, and then also highlight two amazing community examples from our round 2 of our assistance, which includes Brunswick, Maryland, and Hartwell, Georgia. Jason did let me know that he's not able to attend today, but he sent me some great updates, and so I will be reading through his slides. Lastly, we'll also discuss the timeline and the process for applying, and answer any questions about the process that people have, as our program is currently in the open application period for round 3 communities. So first, we're answering, what is Recreation Economy for Rural Communities program? So we had our pilot round in 2019, and this stemmed from a partnership between the Environmental Protection Agency, the USDA Forest Service, and the Northern Border Regional Commission, all joined together, and it grew collectively out of recognizing that the outdoor recreation sector of the economy is a big and growing part of the US economy. And in all of our collective work with rural communities and small towns across the country, just heard this consistent interest for those partners in being able to get some assistance in helping to tap into the growing sector of the economy while also strengthening their communities. So we developed this planning assistance program to help rural communities and small towns leverage outdoor recreation to revitalize their main streets and recognize the impact that it has on natural resource stewardship and overall community health. The program is intended to help each community who is selected for the program to convene their local partners and others to articulate their vision, their goals, and what next steps they could take to make progress on boosting outdoor recreation and revitalizing their main streets and strengthening their economies. We also act as a convener to bring federal and state agency partners to the table, alongside other funders to the table throughout the planning assistance process, to listen to each community's vision and help them with implementation to match and make their resources to make it happen. Our second round of assistance was held in 2021, and we welcomed the addition of the Appalachian Regional Commission to fund, or not to fund, to sponsor 25 communities and work alongside 25 communities that round. This round, we're excited to announce that we have a new partnership with the Denali Commission, and they have joined our federal funding partner team. So now there are several federal partners who are working to support this work, all centered around small towns and rural communities who are interested in working at the intersection of outdoor recreation and Main Street revitalization. We also work alongside a local community steering committee, and then of course, also additional federal funding partners, state, regional partners, kind of anyone who is interested and a stakeholder in these conversations. In the past, we've invited and had representation from other federal agencies, including the Forest Service, Rural Development, Small Business Administration, the National Park Service, Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program, and the Economic Development Administration, along with so many others. So these next 2 slides are just an overview about kind of the nitty-gritty of what the work program is. Unlike a lot of other federal programs, this work program is not a grant program. So there's no funding that happens between any of the federal partners to the community. Instead, it's access to a 2 to 3 day planning assistance process. So consultants and federal agencies, and then the staff who work with each selected community over the course of about a year, walk through this planning assistance process together, with the ultimate outcome being an action plan that the community can then use to ask for additional funding and use as a catalyst for other amazing projects, again, all around outdoor recreation and Main Street revitalization efforts. So this process really starts out now with the stage of the application process, which, like I said, we are currently open for communities to apply. And that deadline for application is middle of October. Again, we'll have some more specifics at the end of this. And once communities apply and are selected for the program, we begin the assessment phase. And so as you can see here, we reach out for a community self-assessment where we essentially ask the community to basically give themselves a report card and a rating on what are some strengths and challenges that we're currently facing in these realms of maybe it's marketing, maybe it's or what are our outdoor recreation assets? How can we bring more people into downtown? What's the health of our main street? Those different things. We work very closely with the steering committee and the entire planning process from the very beginning all throughout the process. So there's also the convening stage. So also in that assessment phase, once a community is selected, we bring out our EPA contractors and go through 3 pre-planning calls. And this really just kind of helps to get a big brainstorming session to figure out what during the 2 or 3 day convening we want to focus on. We, not being EPA or any of the federal employees, but the community. And so we continue to refine that. And it leads to phase 2, which is the convening stage of our program, which is that in-person workshop in the community where we bring in and have state partners, regional partners, federal partners, philanthropic groups, anyone who is interested in kind of the different things that we're all going to be talking about at the workshop as it relates to economic development, environmental stewardship, and that is all done in your community in the convening stage. And then lastly, in the implementation stage, this all leads to a final deliverable, which is a community action plan, which we share with a community. That's really kind of a living, breathing document that communities can then use to advocate for additional funding, to fund some of the specifics laid out in their action plan. And we've seen a lot of great success with that. And I know that we're going to talk a little bit more coming up. So I know it's great to kind of hear it from EPA's side, but we think that the best people that tell our story about work are the communities themselves. And so here is just kind of a brief overview of the communities that we've worked up to this point. So 35 communities all outlined here. As I mentioned, we've had 2 rounds. We're in our current application period for round 3. And so I did just want to highlight some of these areas. So in the blue, that is the Appalachia Regional Commission, barriers or boundaries rather. And then in the green, it's the Northern Border Regional Commission. So again, since they're a funding partner, you'll see kind of a lot of little dots that we fund in those groups. And if you're curious about if your community falls in one of those, we will link to some of those at the very end of this presentation to see. Okay, so like I mentioned, Jason is not able to join us today, but he's shared with me some slides and given me some updates of Hartwell, Georgia, and all the things that have been happening since the workshop. So for anyone who isn't aware, Hartwell, Georgia is located on the border of South Carolina and Georgia. It has a lot of agricultural roots based on its geographic location in the nation. And it was a part of our round 2 application group and cohort alongside Brunswick. The workshop was centered around Lake Hartwell, which is the 3rd largest lake in the Southeast. Apparently you can also get on a boat and go to a Clemson game, which is exciting if you're a college football fan. They have a robust and historic downtown, yet lack connectivity to the lake. It was about a mile away, but there is no sidewalk or clear and safe passageway for folks who are out enjoying recreation on the lake to get and experience all the amenities located in downtown Hartwell. So that was a big missing piece that they wanted to address in wayfinding and connectivity. They have a great existing partnership with the University of Georgia that can help on the planning side and some student engagement with the community, which was great. And here were some of the different workshop goals that they decided to highlight, including connecting assets and history, improving infrastructure, identify marketing, branding, and promotion, and then also develop and expand offerings. So since the workshop, Hartwell has received an outdoor roundtable grant for $10,000 to put in their first trail marker using locally sourced granite, a statue of their namesake, Nancy Hart, which was the only county in Georgia to be named after a woman, which is Hart County. They were also selected as the 2023 Georgia Outstanding Community Transformation Downtown of the Year Award. They also received the inaugural multi-year grant from the Fox Theater of Atlanta for $500,000. The program provides theater students opportunities to travel to the Fox Theater in Atlanta to learn more about the job opportunities beyond just acting in local theaters, as well as a $5,000 scholarship to one student. They said in the selection process that the Fox Theater really loved the work that Hartwell was doing in terms of walkability and the connectivity. And those were themes that were really highly focused in on the work process. And they believe that that played a role in securing this future funding opportunity. They also applied for and were awarded the Georgia Department of Transportation Travel Alternate Grant for $500,000. This had a matching component of 20%, but that they also received additional funding for that matching component from another program. So they don't have to pay anything, which is amazing. Lastly, they also are applying for federal funding for the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. They have a letter of support from the senator and are hopeful that they'll be able to secure those funds as well, which include crosswalks, roundabouts, and additional sidewalk infrastructure parallel to a middle school, which again, that was a theme that came up through the work process. So they have a lot going on, but I think that we'll cap it there to transition to Julian Carmen from Brunswick.
Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to Brunswick. Well, you're not here yet, but there we are on the map. We're in the kind of southwestern part of Maryland, where West Virginia, Virginia, and Maryland all come together and are separated by the Potomac River. So the Potomac River and the C&O Canal are all right parallel with our town and our downtown. So you'll see how that plays a major role in why we considered this program and the things that we have chose to concentrate on. So you can see how close our town is to the lovely Potomac River. And that bridge right there takes you over to Loudoun County, Virginia. So we're right next to all of our state neighbors. Next slide. So I thought it would be important to share why we applied for this program and what we were hoping to get out of it, and then being able to kind of, in the end, tie it back together with, have we seen those things? And I have to tell you, as planners, you're probably sitting there going, okay, well, this is cool, but what does this have to do with us? And when I came, I was a grants person at the time. And when I approached our mayor and council and our planner and everyone else, and I said, I want to be part of this program. And they were like, are you nuts? We'll never get picked. We're a tiny little town, and you know, this is a national program. Plus, we don't get any money. Why are you worried about this? And one of the reasons is because post-COVID, we've seen a lot of activity outside. Everyone coming back out to visit, walk, bike, all those kinds of things. And it's really, we're an old railroad town, so that also, the railroad is between the river, the canal, the railroad, then us. So we are an old railroad town, and we have to reinvent ourselves in terms of what is gonna take us into the future. And that the fact that we are a railroad town, we still do have transportation down to Washington, D.C., which helps us attract commuters and people who would like to live out this way, but still need to get to work downtown. So we knew we have to capitalize on that whole outdoor aspect and the economic drivers that go with it. So we really wanted to focus on not just how do we translate that outdoor recreation into our economy, but how do we raise awareness that we're even here and come into our downtown and see what we have to offer. So it really is a multi-pronged kind of approach to this program. And those are some of the reasons why we applied for, and luckily got it. Hey, how about that? And we are the only Maryland municipality that's, we're so proud of that, that has participated in the program. So if you're sitting there wondering, can I do it? Should I apply for this? Should my town do this? You're not too small, and it's not too big of a deal for your little town to be involved in. Take it from us. So next slide. What we did, this reverberates a lot on what Lauren said. We formed a local steering committee, which you can see us there by that bus that we used. What we did was we put the local steering committee and the planning assistance committee, so there's Lauren on the end there, and all the other government partners that the EPA lined up to work with us. And we got on a bus and we rode around our town. We rode around to see these assets that we have, kind of the connectivity to those assets. And then we held our public workshops. And that was, we got a really good turnout. And that helped kind of move things forward, because people still talk about that as you walk through downtown. They're like, oh yeah, that's part of what we did when we did that outdoor recreation thing. And then we took that feedback and kind of massaged it a little bit to come up with the community action plan. And we refer to that quite often. We just got done, as planners, you'll be interested in this, we just got done a total rewrite of our master plan, and the community action plan that was an output from this program, we used in conjunction with developing that master plan. So we consulted quite often. Next slide. So what are the next steps once you have this master plan? You can see this is one of our community workshops, so you can see there's lots of folks there. And what we did is we took other plans we had. So there's our comprehensive plan. Our Main Street organization also comes up with strategic goals. And our we had a small area plan done probably in 2017, 18. And that we refer to. So all these things kind of cross over and dovetail into each other. And then we're looking at who's really doing what and where, how can we not overwhelm, because we're small, we don't have this huge staff to do all this. So how do we involve community organizations and all of our partners to kind of get these things done? And then also looking for funding and resources for those things that we have yet to do on our plan. Next slide. So what it came down to, and you'll notice some overlap here with Hartwell, Georgia, too, which were very different communities. But our downtown occupancy, we had a lot of vacancies in our downtown. So that was one area we knew we wanted to concentrate on. How welcoming we are to those outdoor enthusiasts. Do we have the amenities that those people are looking for? Do we have the physical connections that allow people to get from, let's say, the C&O Canal into our downtown? How do we kind of transform that into business development and Carmen's going to share with you in a minute that we've actually been kind of successful in doing that. And how do we promote ourselves overall to say, here we are an outdoor destination. Next slide.
Hi, everybody. This is Carmen. So our first goal, downtown occupancy. We wanted to increase the occupancy of downtown buildings to create a vibrant, attractive community hub for residents and visitors. And so the first thing we concentrated on was to continue our Brunswick Building Block Grant Program. This program was started with ARPA funds and awarded through the city of Brunswick. So we got a pretty sizable fund, about 100,000 the first year that we had done the project or the program. And then we got significant funds from going above the city to the state, to the governor. We were able to get about $200,000 from the governor's budget. So we continued that program this year, and we were awarded again some funds from the city, and I went from the governor's budget to our state rep, and we were able to get funds through his budget. So we're continuing to do that program, which is basically giving money to properties that need to help their health, safety, and welfare. Mostly these are very, very old buildings that need a lot of skeleton work. So the next thing we wanted to do was continue the blighted property acquisition program. This program was started within the city. They worked very hard with the state of Maryland with grants. Usually, I think the entire time it was the strategic demolition fund that they used through the state of Maryland, through the Department of Housing and Community Development. The blighted property acquisition program is exactly what it sounds like. There were blighted properties on our main streets. The city bought those properties with that grant money and then turned it around and sold it for very small amount of money to developers. The one, I think, biggest success story we have is what we call the Newberry building, and they have recently opened up their doors to 5 businesses, 3 of which are brand new and 2 which are expanding, and I'll get into that a little bit later in another slide. We also wanted to create promotional materials and a walking tour for prospective downtown building investors. We had our first walking tour in June of 2024 with 40 participants. They were community members, but don't put that down. If all the community have links to other people outside of the community, and so they of course are going to go from that tour and they're going to talk to other people, and then that's how you're going to get your business owners to come into your downtown. So we also created a Brunswick brochure and pocket guide. The Brunswick brochure was created with another grant called a TRIP grant, and that was through our Frederick County Office of Tourism. You'll notice I skipped over coordinate downtown infrastructure improvements. Anything that says in progress on these slides, I'm just going to skip over because I'd rather be able to tell you what we're working on and what has been working. So Lauren, next slide, please. Goal 2 was outdoor recreation amenities, to provide additional basic and supportive amenities that serve residents and visitors participating in outdoor rec. I think the biggest challenge we have downtown today in Brunswick is public restrooms. We have a train station that people can use, but it's a little bit off of the beaten path and it's not open 24/7. We are seeking funding for the public restrooms issue. We also wanted to increase the usage of the West End trails, and we have had some benches added there. We are seeking grants, and RERC, we did apply for the rural implementation grant, but that was not awarded. We were crushed. So the next one was to create a visitor center at the train station. We were awarded $50,000 for the grant for the train station improvements. I believe this was also through DHCD at Maryland State. And the improvements have been focused on mostly exterior, but some interior as well. So next slide, please. Goal 3 was physical connections. We needed to improve connections among our downtown outdoor recreation resources and newer residential developments, particularly for people on foot and bicycle.
I just want to, this is Julie, I just want to jump in here and say that we are not unlike a lot of small towns where you have an older part of town and then you have newer residential developments that come in, and there's little linkage between the two. And that's really what we're aiming at here. So I just wanted to.
Yeah, thanks,
Put
Julie.
that
I forget, not everybody knows about Brunswick. So the first thing we wanted to do was conduct a signage assessment. This has been completed. We did that in our Department of Planning and Zoning, as well as the community development team. So different departments have worked on this, and we have a plan, and we're also working on funding sources for that. I think that the city of Brunswick has signage clutter, and we have old signs that need to be removed. So that's a big thing for us. We also wanted to work on repair and connect sidewalks. We were awarded $500,000 for phase 1 of Maple Avenue, which is a main corridor coming into our downtown Maple Avenue sidewalks. And then we were awarded funding for a multimodal study to improve connectivity. And I'm going to let Julie talk about this because she has more detail.
So on both of the, well, one of these was someone mentioned Safe Streets for All. That's the multimodal study. And the other one was CDBG through DHCD, which sounds like alphabet soup there, but I think you guys probably know both of those acronyms. So the multimodal study really is looking at how do we connect these two very separate parts of our town, the new development, the old development. Even Maple Avenue, one of the reasons it was targeted first is we don't even have sidewalks all the way up Maple Avenue, and our public library is on that street. So it's a very kind of walkable, which if you've ever been to Brunswick, not all of Brunswick's walkable because we have lots of hills. But anyways, we need to complete sidewalks where there's gaps, where the sidewalks don't connect, because then people have to go out in the street to walk. And we have tiny little streets like most little towns. And we're looking at how do we connect bicycle, foot traffic, trails, all of that to really complete our town and keep some of the cars off those tiny little streets. So that is how we're approaching that whole thing, starting out with a study and going from there.
And then we wanted to conduct bicycle infrastructure assessment, and we're doing that through that multimodal study, as Julie just said. Okay, Lauren, I'm ready. So goal 4 is the business development to support the startup growth and recruitment of businesses that complement Brunswick's focus on outdoor recreation. We are beginning an assessment to assess the local and regional economic development capacity, partnerships, roles, and next steps. And I think one of our biggest success stories in the past year has been that we have gotten 5 new businesses. As I was telling you, in the Newberry business, Newberry, we have 3, and those 3 were from farmers markets. If you know anything about the National Main Street, they have a strategic revitalization plan, and one of their things that they push a lot is to have a place for pop-ups. Well, we did our pop-ups through our farmers market, and in the farmers market, they were vendors, and they had been vendors for years. And then when the Newberry building became started to be renovated, they were very excited about that and decided to go and be a part of that building. Since then, we have had 2 more businesses open up on the main street. So the next one was to develop a business recruitment strategy targeting the regional businesses. This is in alignment with the blighted building program that I spoke about earlier. However, one of the things that we did a little differently this time was we had a bicycle shop that had left on our main street. And instead of just throwing that out there on social media that we have this vacant space, or on our website that we have this vacant space, we decided to do a hard push on email for to all the bicycle shops that were surrounding our city, but also in Virginia, West Virginia. We went to Montgomery County, Howard County, Carroll County, and because of that email and word of mouth, we got a new bicycle shop who is opening in the next week. So we're very excited about that recruitment process. As far as business development is concerned, and I know that you've heard me multiple times say grants, Maryland, grants, Maryland. I'm just going to say that it was Maryland and Frederick County Office of Economic Development, and we are currently working with MDOT. We have gone in multiple different directions for grants, but we could not have done it without the partnership of our state. Okay, I'm ready for the next. So goal 5 was promotion, to promote Brunswick as an outdoor recreation, history, and cultural tourism destination linked to the other regional attractions. Our first action item was to promote local outdoor recreation opportunities to the youth and teens. Program manager from the community development department did send out a survey, and I think that she got some very good response from that. So that's going to help us with that action item. We needed to develop virtual and in-person educational tours of the wastewater and water treatment plants. We have began tours for internal staff, and we have done some tours with some area politicians. And as I'm sure Julie could tell you, I believe that this is one of the best ways for you to get your politicians, your higher county, administration, people that really need to know what's going on. This is a great way to show them, because our wastewater plant is in a dire need of a lot of improvements. And the only way that we were able to get some funding for that is because we went ahead and did these tours with the people that it matters. So,
and I would like just to throw in there that you're probably wondering, what does this have to do with outdoor recreation? It's a wastewater plant. But our wastewater plant sits right on the Potomac River. So it ties in that whole kind of function of what it's like to run your town right next to these kind of outdoor destinations and assets.
And then the last one that we had was to create a volunteer program. And we are trying to increase our volunteer recruitment. We've done that at a city level, and we've also done that within Brunswick Main Street. I can say that I believe both of our targets at this point for that volunteer program is more about partnerships. So it's going to be about partnerships with our local organizations like the Lions Club or the Rotary. We're going to go after pods, I think, of people instead of those individual people, which we would be thrilled to have anybody, but I'm just saying that we would, I think we're going to try to go after that way to get people to join us in our endeavors down here. Next slide.
Okay, that's it from Brunswick. I know that was a mouthful.
Thank you. Gosh, there's so many things too that I didn't realize, like the recruitment of the bike shop. That's awesome. Thank you both, Julie and Carmen. Yeah, and folks, whenever you guys were also talking about trying to find funding for public restrooms, I will say that Brunswick, was not a unique theme throughout the process too. So if anyone has any creative ways for funding, public restrooms, feel free to put that in the chat. I know that we get that question a lot. Okay, so for the remainder of our time, I'm just going to briefly overview if maybe you are interested or your community would be interested in applying for the Recreation Economy for Rural Communities program. Like I mentioned, applications are currently open and we're accepting them until midnight, October 16th. And so I just wanted to kind of run through some quick eligibility questions and just kind of the how-tos. So first and foremost, applicants must be located in the United States, among the territories, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, and so that's a consideration. There's also special consideration for communities that are small towns and rural communities. So we don't have an official population or geographic size for this. I can say that we have worked with communities under 1,000 people. And I believe maybe one of the largest communities that we work with is around maybe like the 45,000 or so size, but we don't have like a specific definition of what, population definition for rural communities. Economically disadvantaged communities, tribal and Alaskan Native village communities are encouraged to apply. And I mentioned earlier in the presentation that the work program is funded in part by several funding agencies. So there's also consideration given for communities that are located within the boundaries of the Northern Border Regional Commission, the Appalachia Regional Commission, and then the Denali Commission. So you can see here that there's these 3 links. If you're maybe in that northern area of Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, New York, you're curious to know if you're within that region or the Appalachia region or kind of what those specifics are, you can visit those links to determine your eligibility there. But we do consider applications, you don't exclusively have to be from those regions, but priority is given there. So next, so once a community is selected, I know Carmen and Julie mentioned this a little bit too, but we do ask for communities to form a steering committee. So this looks like various stakeholders, business owners, residents, economic development folks, kind of whoever, casting a very wide net of who wants to be a part of these conversations and making sure that there's intentional engagement in forming your steering committee. Next, we do submit that community self-assessment, which again is like that report card. And we really just ask communities to really think thoughtfully about, hey, what are some strengths of our community? What are some gaps, some weaknesses? What would we love to see if we could just, have a magic wand and in 2 years, everything that we ever wanted would be complete? Really, and just trying to understand more of the themes and just the things that naturally come out of these conversations so that we can focus in on them on the 2 or 3 day workshop convening process. So the next responsibility would be participation in those 3 pre-workshop planning calls that we have led by our consultant team, and then the actual physical in-person workshop sessions, and then also the 3 post-workshop follow-up calls, which lead to that final deliverable of the action plan. And we basically are just going through all of the conversations and the data that we've gathered through the workshop and just narrowing it down into that action plan that we can give you all to, again, use it to leverage for additional funding and just kind of stay on track of whatever was discussed during the workshop. We also ask for communities if they're selected to secure a workshop venue. So like I said, this is not a grant. We don't have funding available for that in addition to refreshments. And so we ask the community, a lot of times it can be held in like a town hall or a space like a community center that is, graciously given for the time. And then also no requirement of refreshments or food. And so it's really kind of the community's discretion, I guess, on how they want to kind of approach that. Next, we do ask for a community tour. So we think about the different federal and state regional partners who maybe aren't as familiar with the community, just providing opportunity to, like Julie and Carmen said, we all went on that bus, rode around Brunswick, get to understand a little bit more of the landscape that will provide a framework for the conversations moving forward in the workshop, point out different special projects or different things that you would like to see happen. Again, kind of going back to those gaps and challenges that were outlined in the community self-assessment. Next, we also do ask for the steering committee and the point of contact to be really intentional about inviting community members. We hear this time and time again that the best way to get a full house is by personal invitation. And so we ask folks to, in whatever way works best for the community, make sure that the word is out, because we do want this to be a community-driven process for everyone in your community. And then next, lastly, we ask for help with the implementation of the action plan. So once we have gathered all of that data from the workshop and the pre and the post workshop calls and pass that off, we really, from that point, it's up to the community to kind of decide the next steps on how they want to implement that action plan and applying for grants. And again, once one action item is complete, adding an additional one and kind of keeping that as a living document, as we like to say. So you might be thinking of applying, and maybe you're trying to figure out, okay, well, what would the scope of our application be? And so these are just some various themes that we found, I guess, threads from previous applicants and from our round 1 and round 2 communities. And so sharing here, I learned too, Carmen, Julie, you were mentioning about youth engagement. So that is definitely a popular theme that a lot of communities, rural communities especially, are trying to engage their youth. Also expanding trail networks. So like I mentioned in Hartwell, that connectivity of downtown to outdoor recreation, if you can, eliminate the need to drive, have a parking space at either site, if people can walk and run and bike and scooter, what a fun kind of vibrant network. Also, we mentioned in-town amenities, marketing local downtowns and main streets. So that branding piece, kind of figuring out what the brand of your town could be, thinking through that, as well as stewardship, community consensus, equitable access, all of those things. So just wanted to provide some examples for folks. And next, you might be asking about eligible, who can apply. So we receive applications from local governments. This will also include county governments, tribes, nonprofit organizations, institutions represented by the community, also colleges and universities. Regional organizations are, or can apply rather, but we really do have this kind of place-based focus for assistance. And so as long as there's a strong partnership or you're sharing that tie, that will lead to a stronger application. And like I mentioned, so we're currently accepting applications for our round 3 of assistance. It closes October 16th at midnight. I will add in the chat after this a link to our website, which includes previous frequently asked questions, a link to apply. We also held a webinar that kind of goes through an even more in-depth understanding of our application process if folks are really interested. That we held last week, and that's posted on there too. Some videos from previous communities as well, and just a bunch of great resources. So I will add that to the chat momentarily. We expect our communities to be selected and notified early next year, selecting anywhere between probably 20 to 25 communities this round. The workshops will take place in 2025, so probably mid to late 2025. And again, there's that website, but I'll put it in the chat as well for our EPA Smart Growth website. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to this receconomy@epa.gov email, or you can always reach out to me as well. So that is all we have. Carmen, Julie, thank you guys so much for joining in. And I believe that we have about 40 minutes for questions. So thank you all for having us.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Julie and Carmen. This was a great presentation, and I think a very interesting model and case study for how other communities can achieve similar results. Thank you all for sharing your experiences and your work on linking recreational opportunities to economic growth in your community. Throughout the presentation, we've been assembling questions from the audience. You can continue to submit questions throughout the discussion, and we will get to as many as we can until 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So at this point, I'll ask our speakers to turn on their cameras, and we'll get started with the questions. Lauren, we have a question specific to the process and who can apply. You mentioned that you don't formally define what is a rural community, and that regional planning commissions need to have a local or place-based focus. Someone has asked, how can this translate to rural communities that don't have towns or cities? For example, one county I work with covers 450 square miles, but only has one town, while each community has its own central hub. There isn't necessarily a main street to tie into. Do you have any advice for how to handle something like that?
Yes, definitely. So yeah, you're right. Like I mentioned, we don't have an explicit kind of population tied to how we define a small town or region. And we have had communities in the past that are rural. I mean, even with the addition of the Denali Commission in Alaska, we had that conversation that there's a lot of very remote communities that, like you said, don't have that traditional main street. And so we've worked with a few communities in the past that don't have that, and we're not like accredited or associated with like the National Main Street group. Like we don't, it's not a requirement to have. Maybe I would just recommend for whoever's asking this question to think about what is kind of a natural gathering space for your community. Like where are those connection points that might not be a traditional main street, but maybe it is like a trail, some sort of trail system, or a local library, or maybe one or two businesses, or something like that. And really just trying to kind of think through where are folks gathering and convening, because there is that place-based element, but then obviously being outdoor recreation focused too, where is that an overlap? So I think if you're interested and you feel like there is an overlap between recreation economy and economic development and whatever sense that means for your community, would love to see your application.
Great, thank you. Carmen and Julie, you mentioned that you and Lauren mentioned that there is no funding initially for the RERC process. How helpful was the RERC action plan that resulted from the process in your efforts to secure other grants and funding in implementing some of the great progress that you've made?
I think Julie probably can answer the question in more detail, but the one thing I did want to say is that the real benefit to me was having all of those people in one room together, that I could always say, hey, I met them personally. I started a relationship with them, and then they knew about Brunswick. They went from there to Brunswick. So during the RERC process, you will be able, at the very last meeting, I think it was, that we had, the group EPA, they invited all of these federal and state, local people to come and join us. And then that's where I got to start my partnerships. Go ahead, Julie, sorry.
No, I would say that's really important. I think we found that the key to getting funds regardless is you have to create a relationship. Plus, once you meet us, you're not going to forget us. Like, we really promote, we're shameless in promoting our town. And then the other thing is, I think that that once you put in an application, being able to say that you are really focusing on how to make your recreational assets work for you, adds a credibility that somebody who hasn't been through that process doesn't have, because they haven't gone through setting those goals and prioritizing these things. And, of course, you want to give money to people who are ready to do something with it. So I think that's another way it helps, besides those relationships that Carmen was talking about.
Great, thank you. Lauren, did you have anything to add to that?
I was gonna say, I think well said. I think you hear that a lot sometimes from the federal funding side. You're right, like you're looking for a certain, for communities that are ready to go, that kind of have that clear vision and that clear focus on, hey, we want to fund this specific project. We've thought about how it relates to these other projects and how it can lead to the overall betterment of our community as a whole. And you're right. I mean, I think too, in listing off some of the Hartwell's accomplishments along with Brunswick, I think we kind of see too that there is that connection piece of having different federal and state partners in the room who say, hey, this action item that we were talking about, did you know that our office can help fund this directly? Things like that kind of come through that conversation. But I agree. I think once you have that final action plan, we've seen that adopted into city councils, into just kind of, yeah, used for leveraging for future funding opportunities as well. But I think Carmen Julie did a great overview.
Great.
And I would also add that after you're done the program, Lauren and all the other folks that you met even through that process are great at sending you, hey, this thing's coming up. And so that helps keep things on your radar too.
Right. That kind of points us to the next couple of questions for Lauren, and Julie and Carmen, jump in if you have thoughts as well. Are the planning team members that come out to do the initial assessment, are they EPA staff members, consultants, or a combination of the two? And because our audience includes some planning consultants, if a consultant was interested in participating in the program, how often would you issue an RFP or a request for a consultant?
Thanks. Yeah, so we are not the planners. We kind of come in as the federal agency liaisons. But yeah, we do have hired or consulted rather planners that come in on site, and usually two folks to help kind of facilitate the process. And I'm not sure on that side of like kind of how, like frequency of how or when it opens or RFQs. I know that we are in the process of kind of, I guess, like selecting our consultants. But that is a good question. I wonder how planners can kind of get on that list. We do have an OCR newsletter, but I feel like that might be a different purpose. Unfortunately, I don't really involve myself with that side, but yeah, so I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. But I believe it's every couple years or so that we can select consultants out of our, I don't know what the terminology is, our bulk consultant list.
Awesome. And if you do find the answer and it's available with the link, we can share that with folks when we share the recording of the video, and the slides will also be shared as well. The other question is, do you point communities toward particular funding? And I think Carmen and Julie addressed this a little bit. Once the program is over, do you point them towards funding opportunities that might be helpful for them to implement their funding ready action plan?
Yeah, I would say we do. Also, the federal partners that are in the room, they do a lot of that too, thankfully, because I mean, I know EPA's programming, but for instance, somebody from the USDA Rural Development, they do a great job at connecting to different specific rural development funding opportunities. When we have Appalachia Regional Commission, I think that's the benefit of having all and inviting all of these different federal partners and state partners who have those connections, and getting them to be a part of the 2-day process too. They're in it alongside the community, so that they can kind of make that connection too and say, yeah, as a next step, you should apply for this grant, and kind of expansion of maybe knowing what all's out there, because I know that there is so much. And we also find that obviously within the community, there's a lot of knowledge for us too, of like kind of, hey, you had funding for this. How did you get funding for that? And then we just try to swap that, because we want, yeah, communities to be successful. So
I think that's a common theme. Establishing those relationships through the process helps to continue that conversation, and knowing who to call or who to give advice or get advice from. So thank you for that. The next question is for Carmen and Julie. How much workload was involved in this and participating in the program? And are small towns with little to no staff capable of handling the program? And do you have any advice for smaller towns that might be struggling with whether or not they want to apply?
Apply. That's what I say. I think that we are a small town. You know, we have to wear many hats, as most small towns do. And I think what you really need to do is leverage some of it. It doesn't all have to be on the city. That you can, every small town has those people, those people that show up for everything and that help with everything. And frankly, that know everybody. Use those people and get them to help you. It was not a whole lot of work on our part. The work came in spurts too. I also saw a question somewhere about seasonality of it. We were really able to pick doing ours in February because there's not many people coming up and down the C&O Canal in February. So, we were able to do that. So I think that's an important part, is making the program kind of fit in what your cycle is. And using those other people and those other organizations to kind of help you. Going over and doing the assessment at the beginning that Lauren was talking about was a bit of work. And then there was a little lull, and then there's the workshops, which kind of take care of themselves. I mean, you don't have to really do much as the city people involved there. And then refining the report in the end was some work. But again, there are multiple people involved. So I would say don't shy away from it just because you're small. Dream big and go big, and go ahead and apply. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think that at first it might be just a small group of your, city people, but then as soon as you start having those first community meetings, more and more people are going to jump on. Your bike club is going to figure out, oh, look at what they're doing. I mean, put it out there, let them know. And I think the more you do that, the more people that are going to show up. Plus, that final meeting that you do is that who's going to do what thing. And that was eye-opening for me for that last one, because a lot of things were being like kind of put on Brunswick Main Street. However, there were enough people there that went, oh, you know what, we can help you with that. We'll help with that aspect of that. Or so anyway, it just seems like it was I say yes, Julie is absolutely correct. Apply, and then I think the people will come and help. Yeah.
Also, real quick, I wanted to kind of circle back. I have another colleague helping me with some questions about the consultants. So we do have a blanket purchase agreement, and I guess there's a list of a stable of consultants that we can use and choose from, and it's set about every 5 years, starting, I guess, last year in 2023 or so. So just wanted to loop back to that. Thanks, Yvonne.
Thank you. There is a question for Carmen and Julie. Folks are curious to know more about how you recruited businesses to expand, within your community.
I think for that question, what we've kind of already said, the farmers market where we had vendors that used it as pop-up scenarios, that was one. And then that targeted marketing through the email, that was another. But also word of mouth, like the person that bought Newberry, she is known throughout Brunswick. And so as soon as she started putting on her website that she was renovating the Newberry, that's what she called it, and Facebook, and she did videos. So, social media can be your friend, and making sure that your partnerships in your downtown, if you, I hope you have a Main Street But even if you don't, like your Economic Development Commission can be a huge plus for you to go through them. Do you have any other?
Yeah, the one thing I want to bring up is when Carmen was talking about the targeted email we did with the bike shop, that was so intentional because we know we need a bike shop.
Yeah.
We're right by the C&O Canal. And when one left, we knew we wanted not just any business in that space, but we wanted a bike shop. So that's why we reached out to just that, just other bike shops that were around, hoping they would want to expand here, because like who wouldn't, first of all, and second of all, we have such a you know, a captive audience in terms of bikes. You know, all we had to do was share that how many times people came off the canal and say, oh my God, my tire's going low or whatever, and I need a bike shop. So I think don't be afraid to do those. It doesn't have to be glossy marketing pictures and all that kind of thing. It can be as simple as sending emails out the way we did. So and I would say that what's happening with us is I think it's a result of a lot of years. This didn't happen just like overnight. We have been promoting and promoting and promoting and shamelessly walking up to politicians and all kinds of people with our hands out and asking them to write checks. I'm kidding. They don't, it never works that way, but we try. But we shamelessly promote ourselves. And I think one way we got into this program is we had interviews, you know, it got narrowed down and narrowed down. And we were just nuts in our interview about bragging about our town and everything, which made us stick out and made us ended up getting selected for it. So don't be afraid to really, really promote your town, no matter how small it is.
I love that.
Yes, that's great. There is a question about the role that conservation plays in the program. I think it means both in terms of conservation of natural assets, but also economic and community assets. Sometimes those hidden jewels open up a perspective for greater investment and development and how to protect the essence of the community. And someone else has asked about how the assessments of older buildings fit into the puzzle, and how that sort of benefit of reusing what's existing rather than tearing down and building new has played out in your communities.
Well, I have a couple things on that. One really interesting thing that we didn't bring up, that probably it was kind of in the works before this program, but it kind of solidified our whole direction, is the fact that we do have a new developer coming in who did do a lot of demolition. But as the part of the mitigation process you go through with the state, we identified a building that we asked for them to donate to us. And we are using that building actually as an interactive museum. So we're using it to portray how life was in our town when we were a thriving, booming railroad town. And that building is right by the railroad, right by the canal. It is on that way from the canal into our downtown. So we're using that as another attraction, another asset that we have, that we are conserving, that we saved from being torn down. And we're, you know, putting it out there as another kind of destination to come to. And the other thing is when you talk about assessing the structures of these buildings and how sound they are and all that, that's why that blighted properties program came up, is because we know there's so much money that has to just go into a building to make it be able to even come up to code these days. And regardless of what you want to do with that building, remember that those investments stay with the building. So don't think about it as though I'm putting all this money in and this one business is going to be able to benefit from that. No, as long as that building's standing, you're benefiting from that.
Mhm.
So we use that program on buildings that we knew needed ADA compliance, needed more bathrooms added to it, needed better plumbing added to it. And we then came up with that building blocks program that we used some ARPA money for, and that we funded through everything we can think of. And with that program grants money to property owners who want to do more with that building, and we give them the access to at least making the building viable. And then their money can go further to renovating it and really making it into something that has a targeted use.
So I would add to that just to give some examples of how we have repurposed our old buildings. So we have a what would you call Beans in the Belfry? Beans in the Belfry, it's a little restaurant in a
Coffee shop.
Coffee shop in a old church. We have a brewery that is in a fire station. And we have currently a person who bought a downtown bank, and they're looking at multiple different outside the box things to do in the bank. And then I think another important thing to say at this point is that we also have a conservation district. We have rules and guidelines so that we don't, we don't ignore or get rid of our historic like heirlooms, like that we don't destroy what made this city so wonderful at the very beginning, right? And we also do a thing called the Facade and Interior Grant, which we do every year. Main streets all across Maryland have that. And very strict with the facades of these buildings, what you can use it for, what you cannot use it for. So all of those things go to be able to keep our buildings, for what do we say? We said the building blocks, the last time we did building blocks is we want these buildings to last much longer than you and I are on this earth. They should outlive us. And so that's what we're trying to help.
And if I can just add a little bit on that too. So from the EPA side of things, we do offer multiple brownfields grants and funding and assistance. So you can find that all online, EPA brownfields. There's a regional contact. I believe Maryland's out of Region 3 in Philadelphia. But there's free assistance for technical assistance to brownfields and targeted brownfield assessment, which are both free for communities, first come, first serve, to essentially kind of look at assessments of your downtown, potentially brownfield properties. And there might be some money to do phase 1, phase 2 cleanup to maybe help to sell a property, different things like that. So that's just a resource that comes to mind. And I agree, like you said, you can't really recreate a historic, quaint downtown, right? And there's something so special in the stories of small rural downtown places that, like, for instance, in Brunswick, you guys are located right alongside the beautiful Potomac River, like that. That's such a special story that I find that a lot of travelers are drawn to, but also residents. Like you said, there's a lot of history in places. And if someone could, park their car and then be able to walk, bike, not have to get it for the whole weekend, like what a win. You're spending time in the downtown, spending your money resources there. You're not having to expand out. You're creating that kind of dense downtown center that a lot of communities grew up in. And so, yes, it's definitely, conservation is kind of where we see too, it's for Office of Smart Growth, and not wanting to have to expand, that everything is all in one area. So great question.
Perfect. A couple of questions have come in about the business development strategy and whether or not there's an educational or job training component to get local citizens engaged in the recreational economy, as well as to train and encourage entrepreneurs who want to start businesses in that economic segment, as well as whether or not you've seen, and this might be for Lauren, any community colleges who might sponsor certification programs in the recreational economy.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. That's definitely where my brain goes too, is we've had some communities host entrepreneurial boot camp, business boot camp, I think it's called. And so maybe they'll have somebody from, let's say, a university, or I forget what group was coming in, but basically you host a downtown like pitch night. Well, I guess you could do a couple different things. So yeah, one thing is like the business boot camp where you bring in a business professional or maybe someone through the small business administration. They have like the SCORE mentors. But anyways, you could like kind of host a seminar a couple nights a week for budding entrepreneurs who maybe are starting to sell their goods at a farmer's market and are looking to scale up and move into a brick and mortar in your town. And so I have heard of those coming through universities, like their business departments or consultant or, local mentors. I've also heard of communities doing like a pitch night. So everybody maybe gives $5 and you sign up. Communities have different ideas, and whoever wins with the best like entrepreneurial, I want to start this business in our community, they win the pot of money of whoever comes, and maybe it's hosted at a small theater. So I've heard that those are really successful models. As far as the university component too, that we actually, my colleague Steph had a partnership with the University of Colorado, and they actually have a grad program with outdoor recreation. And they were able to fund the 3 unselected communities in Colorado that we were not able to fund, and go through the same work process, but through the university. So I think that is just such a great model. Like I said, unfortunately, we can only, I guess, award like up to 25 communities each round, but we have really been encouraged by seeing how universities are stepping up, sometimes state governments as well, and saying, hey, this is a great model. We want to bring it to our communities and directly fund this great work. So
I did want to add one thing to that, Lauren, is that you might want to check with your county and see if they're doing anything, because Frederick County Office of Economic Development has this exact program that they offer entrepreneurs. And you have to go through the program, but they educate you on everything from finances to how to get your employees to, it's the whole gamut of how to market your business. And then they try to walk alongside of you as you're opening your business. And the beautiful thing about that program is that they're opening businesses right in Frederick County. So so you might want to check with your counties just to see if they have a program like that.
I would say the other thing, we took the Julie and Carmen show to our local community college and to a college in Frederick, and said, hey, what about Brunswick? So that's what I mean about shameless promotion. But we talked a lot about our focus on outdoor recreation and everything. You didn't see that in our plan, and I saw a question about this, like, is 2 to 3 years long enough? Well, I think it builds on itself. And so we kind of recognized that was coming up, and you have to plant the seed, and then it takes years sometimes for that to really come to fruition. So that's what our thought on that was. It wasn't exactly a goal in our work report, community action report, but we did see that as something that we'd have to do coming down the pike. And so we went ahead and planted those seeds. And the advantage you have about being rural in that is that those entities have a whole bunch of people all around you out there in the country that need their services. So pitching to them that you become a satellite or something to them, really, you'll be surprised. We were surprised how much they'd already thought of Brunswick for those kinds of things. So And we were looking at, hey, even if we can't get something big like a campus or something out there, hey, we could get a couple classes held in the local library, or something like that. So again, don't be afraid, even though you're a small town, to think much larger and form those partnerships.
That's perfect. Thank you. The next question has to do with downtown properties, and in their small community, most of the downtown properties are privately owned. Do you have any strategies or solutions to encourage owners, private owners, to take advantage of improving the properties and using grants such as the facade improvement grant that you mentioned exists in Brunswick?
We both took a deep breath at the same time on that one. Well, to be perfectly honest, there are some, all of our downtown properties are privately owned. And there were some property owners that we knew weren't going. You can't entice them to fix anything up. And so that's how that blighted properties program actually, what we did was, even before we started that program, we had DHCD folks come here, and we walked them all around our town and we asked them for ideas. And this program actually was one of their ideas. And the idea was, get the property away from those property owners who aren't going to do anything. And so we used that grant money to buy the properties and then get them into the hands of owners who would do something with them. So, because there's incentive programs, you only have so much control over that, and you only have so much leverage that you can have there. And so I think that our approach was, we have to find a way to get these property out of those people's hands. And so that was our approach, and it's been successful so far.
I also think that just pure competition, I know that sounds crazy, but when Mr. Jones is improving his building and it looks so good with the facade money that they got, it makes the neighbor want to be that nice too. But like Julie said, I have a person downtown that I said, I'll help you, like, write the application. And as much as they said they were all for it, then at the end of the day, they, nothing. So there are people that we're just not going to be able to touch. I do have to say that relationships is like more than half your battle. If you have relationships with these owners downtown, and you're communicating with them on the regular basis, and just letting them know what's available, I think you'll find that you'll be successful.
Great. Let's see. What are some effective ways to bring visitors from the outdoor recreation spots to the local towns to spend more money locally? You mentioned the need to provide linkages between the river and the canal to your downtown businesses. How did you address those challenges? And maybe Lauren can jump in with some examples from Hartwell or other places.
I would say we're not even finished with that yet. One of our complicating factors is we have a railroad that is between our town and the canal and the river. And post-COVID, we've had a lot of train blockages for sometimes up to an hour. We are working with MDOT and other partners to actually create a pedestrian/bike bridge that will take people across the railroads and dump you right out at the canal or our downtown. So that was one thing, but we joked and had a lot of ideas. We were like, oh, let's have a gondola take people over the thing, or let's have this kind of, some kind of attraction, you know? But I think the other thing is, for a long time, we had nothing going on in our downtown to draw people there. And now we're starting to get these cute little businesses. We're starting to have another museum that will draw people up there. Another thing that we've done is a lot of promotional things outside of our area. The Main Street organization has done like commercials that show up, not TV commercials necessarily,
Like
but sometimes,
Comcast,
yeah, like Comcast and that kind of stuff. And so getting Brunswick's name out there and saying, these are all the things you can do in Brunswick, you know, you can bike ride, you can go on a raft trip. We're right next to Harper's Ferry, so there's that kind of historic thing. We have more Airbnbs and things like that in town, so we have more lodging. So you've got to kind of pull all those things together to get those people from those outdoor assets into town and talk to them. Ask them what they want.
Yeah.
We know that people want for example, we know that people want bike washes. That's a big deal, because on the towpath, on the C&O Canal, we call it the towpath, they get muddy sometimes and dirty and everything, and they want a place, and they have these really fancy bikes. They want a place to, you know, take care of that and get all the mud off and them, and you know. So make sure you're targeting your amenities, your things that you're adding to your town, to that group of people that you want to attract, because they talk to each other up and down the canal, and they'll say Brunswick's the place to stop because they have XYZ that other towns don't have.
And I'd also say, just don't forget, use your county.
Yeah.
Use your county, because I can send things to Frederick County Office of Economic Development, and they send it out for me. So, I mean, I don't even have to spend that money. They're already doing it for me in partnership with your, if you have other main streets in your area, partnerships with them, because now you're spending less money for the publications to go out to tell what's happening in your city. So all of that.
No, those are great. And I love too what you kind of talked about too, of like starting out small, you know, and that there is a lot of conversation on the C&O Canal or any of the outdoor recreation spheres and circles. Something that I did want to highlight too for Brunswick is you guys have that beautiful welcome sign too, right? That's across, kind of welcoming in between the canal riders going into the town. So I think there's something that really kind of demanding attention. Hey, you guys are biking, but also look at this great town just, you know, 50 feet from the towpath. And so I think that can definitely draw people, being intentional about signage. Also I'm thinking too, like overall experience of a space, like kind of art, like highlighting local artists. Great downtown murals have been fun for folks kind of coming in as like a destination. I know you mentioned like pop-up spaces, and I think that those are all really good ways to elevate your community too. And like I said, just I think a love for a community spills over that you want to share it. And I know that that's very true for Carmen and Julie here. So I feel it, and I'm a Maryland native too. So I love Maryland, and you guys, it shows that you love Brunswick too.
Yes, and on that note, I would like to say that I have totally enjoyed this conversation, and the passion and enthusiasm that you all share for your work is amazing. I have let it go on to our 2:30 deadline, but I did want to give you all a chance to give any closing remarks or any last minute advice you might have for our listeners and viewers that you weren't able to get to.
The only thing I would say is that, you know, we kept showing our contact information, and I just think that if you have any specific questions, that Julie or I would not mind, you know, replying to you and trying to help you. And it's all about it, you know, it's all about success. We're not just in it for one our little, yes, we love Brunswick and that's great, but we would love to see people be just as successful as we are. So, and recreation is a great way to do that. You pull in all populations with riding a bike or walking in a beautiful place. So I would just say, yeah, use my contact information, and I'll help in any way I can.
I say, don't be afraid, just do it. Apply, use as many different things for your community as you can. Don't be shy about it. And don't just do what you've always done, because guess what that gets you? What you've always gotten. So just do it. Just apply. Don't worry about I'm too small. Don't worry about I can't handle this work load, because you can. You know, us little towns, we're gritty. We can just get in there and roll our shirt sleeves up and make it happen. So that's what that's my parting thought.
Yeah, and I would just add too, kind of throwing off this conversation of whatever town you're from, like it is very distinctly unique. You know, the stories that are there, the history that's there, the location, the different things that exist currently, the people, and really whether it's applying for our program or any program, I think really just kind of taking some time to think about that and express that, like you said, no, there's no other Brunswick, there's no other Hartwell, there's no other your town, you know, and really leveraging that in a beautiful way of an overflow of, yeah, your love for the place that you live in. So I'm excited to just, yeah, be on this journey with everybody. And thank you for having us, Jill.
Awesome. Thank you. This has been great. So I think I did hear a well-timed train whistle in the background as you were concluding. And on that note, I will say this concludes today's webinar, Growing a Recreational Economy for Rural Communities. I would like to offer my sincerest gratitude to our wonderful speakers for joining us today and for sharing their work on this important topic. Thank you to everyone who attended. And also thank you, John Coleman, who helps keep our webinars running smoothly in the background. The complete recording of today's webinar will be posted online in a day or two. We will also share the slides, so you'll have those as well. When you exit today's webinar, you will be asked to participate in a short evaluation. Please take a few moments to complete that and provide us feedback so that we can improve the webinar experience. Only those who indicated that they require a certificate during registration will receive one via email following the webinar. They will be sent out in a few days. Please keep an eye on your inbox for details on future webinars sponsored by the Maryland Department of Planning and the Smart Growth Network. Thank you very much for joining us today and have a wonderful day.